Hey there, welcome to the first video with the kidney. What we're going to do in this first video is we're going to, oopsie poopsie, we're going to label. We're going to go quickly and we're just going to label so that uh, when we start talking about the process, you'll have heard all of these words, you know where they fit together. So here, whenever you see the word renal, that just means kidney. So this is the renal artery, which means the artery that goes into the kidney. So let's just put artery. And then the blood that's coming out of the kidney is going to be the renal vein. So blood going in artery, blood coming out vein. The renal pelvis is the center here. This is where sort of all of the waste is going to go. So let's label this the pelvis. And the renal cortex right here is going to be the outside of the kidney. Do-do-do. Do-do-do. This is the outside of the kidney. So when we think of cortex, we should think of outside. So like the cerebral cortex is the outside of your brain. So let's call this the renal cortex, and the renal medulla is the inside. So you can see here I've drawn in some solutes. So remember that the renal medulla is going to be a bit more concentrated. There's going to be a higher concentration of solutes in here. So let's call this the renal medulla. And we're going to be later on talking about a part of the kidney called the nephron. And the nephron is, it sort of starts here in the cortex, and it goes down into the medulla, and it comes back up like this. And so this is one of millions of nephrons that are going to make up the kidney. So the kidney is just stacked and stacked and stacked with nephrons, and the nephron is going to be what actually does the filtering of the blood to produce the urine. So there's two types of these nephrons. What I drew here looks more like a cortical nephron. If you think of it like this, which is pretty simple, that the nephron has sort of more, it's spending more time, it exists more in the cortex. Whereas the juxtamedullary nephron is going to sort of sink lower. It's going to go down lower into that medulla, and it's going to spend more time in this highly concentrated area. So there's more salt. If you think about this right now, if you just think if it's spending more time in the high concentration, it's going to pull more of that water out. But let's not get too far into this. So that's the juxtamedullary nephron, so it spends more time in the medulla. And when the blood is being filtered, it becomes filtrate. That filtrate travels through the nephrons, and then it travels into the renal pelvis. This is sort of like the waste. This is going to be, so this is the renal, it's funny, keeps renal pelvis. And then the renal pelvis, after the filtrate goes into the renal pelvis, it's going to travel down into the ureter, and then it's going to hang out and exist in the urinary bladder. And so if we have another kidney over here, which you know you have two kidneys, most of us have two kidneys unless you've donated one, and that other kidney will fill on the other side, and this is where your urine is stored until it travels out and leaves through the urethra. So this is the kidney itself. So let me bring you to the next page. Here is a small version of what a nephron looks like. And so if you can keep this process or this idea in your mind, then the nephron will be easy to keep in mind. So here, the blood goes in, and then it comes out. And about 1/5 of that blood is going to be filtered through, and it passes through. And while it's passing through this tube, it's going to, it's particles or vitamins and glucose and Molecules are going to be reabsorbed back into the blood. Toxins are going to be secreted out, and then it's going to be excreted. And so this excretion goes through the renal pelvis, and then through the ureters, and then through to the urinary bladder, and then out through the urethra. And so this is just a very small picture, and we'll come back to this, but it explains, it shows very simply what this is showing here. So in this picture, it's really just a more complicated, it's really just a more complicated version of the picture that we just looked at. But what I want to do, instead of going through the process, we're just going to label stuff. And a couple of the words that I didn't put on this list that I should have, one is the afferent capillary, A-F-F-E-R-E-N-T, the afferent capillaries, and that's the blood going into the nephron, and the efferent, E-F-F-E-R-E-N-T, that's the blood coming out of the nephron. And so we said that 1/5 of the blood is going to be filtered out. So the heart is going to pump the blood into this afferent capillary, and about 1/5 of it is going to be pushed through. So we have about 1/5 is pushed through, and about 1/5 of this is going to be filtrate. So filtrate is what passes through this tube of, or this sort of twisted tubes of capillaries, is what we call the glomerulus. And so here, this is where the blood flows. This is where the filter is. It's porous here, and the blood is going to be filtered through, and it's going to go into the Bowman's capsule. This is the Bowman's capsule. The Bowman's capsule sort of just houses the glomerulus, and this is where the filtrate travels through. And first, it's going to travel into the proximal tubule. So this right here, this here is the proximal tubule. And then the filtrate's going to travel down. We have this here, this whole thing, I'm just going to do this like this, is the loop of Henle. It's funny, it looks like little eyes. Loop of Henle. And so this is going to be, and this should make sense, the descending tubule. And this is also going to make sense. The filtrate's going to travel down the descending tubule, and then it's going to travel up the ascending tubule. That looks like an E, an A. No, it won't draw, so it's a tubule, T-U-B-U-L-E. So it's going to travel up, and then it's going to travel. So if this is the proximal tubule, remember that proximal means closer, so it's closer to the beginning, and distal means further. So this is the distal tubule, and that makes sense because it's further from the beginning. And then here we're going to have the collecting duct. So everything that actually makes it over here, the filtrate that makes it through this whole loop of Henle and the tubules, is going to be collected here in the collecting duct. And the collecting duct is going to lead to the renal pelvis. So all of the filtrate that makes it through these nephrons is going to be collected and then sent out. So let's see, let's cross off everything that we have labeled. Proximal tubule, distal tubules, loop of Henle. And so this right here, I didn't label this. It's a little bit messy. I don't want to label it now, but this is the Bowman's capsule. The Bowman's capsule is right here. Now, around the the proximal tubule, the distal tubule, and the loop of Henle, there's a system of capillaries. So there's blood vessels, tiny little blood vessels all around it. So we're going to just draw this. This is going to look messy. We'll just draw these. These are just all around. And we're going to call these the peritubular capillaries. Peritubular capillaries. And they're going to be around both the proximal and distal tubule. So as filtrate is going to be reabsorbed back into the body, it's going to eventually end up in these peritubular capillaries. And just because it's biology and we have 100 different words for every concept, these capillaries, as they are, it's the same idea as they are going around the loop of Henle. Here they're going this way, they're going across, they're all over. This system, this network of capillaries around the loop of Henle, we call that the vasa recta. So it's the same idea as the peritubular capillaries. It's just that they're around the loop of Henle. So we have peritubular capillaries, we have vasa recta. So on this side, I have aquaporins. So we know that aquaporins, those are proteins that allow water to flow. So here, this side, we're going to have a very porous side, the descending tubule. So I'm going to put this right over here because I'm out of room. Aquaporins are on the descending tubule side. So these are all along the descending side. So water is going to be passing through the descending tubule. However, the ascending tubule, this is impermeable to water. So water will not be passing through this side. And we'll talk more about why that is a little bit later. But I just want you to know that the descending side is filled with aquaporins, water's passing through, whereas when it's ascending, this is impermeable to water and water is not passing through. All right, so that is all of our vocab. Remember to add in afferent capillaries and efferent capillaries to this list here. And I will see you in the next video.